Hello, I'm Daniela, and we're now deep into lesson 5, halfway through the series. By now, you know I'm a total romantic, always have been. And that is precisely why I had to learn all of this the very hard way. When you're a true romantic, you really believe that love can do everything. That if two people really love each other enough, they will just know what to do with each other's needs and how to handle themselves in the relationship. And that deep connection should simply flow and feel beautiful. And then life teaches you otherwise. The seasons of life, they're hard. That loving someone deeply doesn't really mean you know them that well. That being known, truly known in the places that matter to you the most, being vulnerable and tender, it's not something that really just happens. It's something that two people build with love, with intentionality, conversation by conversation, with far more intention than anyone ever taught us anywhere. Hopefully, or maybe you come from one of those amazing families where you learned that at the dinner table, but I didn't have that fortune, and I'm pretty sure a lot of us didn't either. So today we're going to talk about the 4 conversations most couples never have. And I'm going to be quite upfront about this. These are not conversations about problems. They are conversations about foundational topics like who you are, what you need, what you fear, and where you're going together as a couple. They are the path towards genuinely getting to know each other. Now, I can already see some of you thinking, oh, no, how do I have those conversations without turning them into a fight? Or what if vulnerability is way too risky for me? And those are real questions. Most of us that have walked this path have had them at one point or the other. And I want you to know that we will get there in this series in some of the lessons. We're going to be talking about conflict and actually how to get comfortable with conflict and comfortable with a kind, honest, tender, and sometimes difficult conversations that actually bring us closer. But first, these 4, because you actually need to know what you want to build towards before you actually work your tools to build it. So up until now, I've been speaking a lot about tools, about skills, about capacities and frameworks for the relationship. And I truly believe in all of them deeply. Without the tools, love drifts. And without the language, even the most genuine care can miss the mark and you stop reaching the other person. But the tools are really not the whole story. And I think perhaps this is the moment of the series for me to name it out loud. Because underneath every tool, every framework, and every skill we developed in the relationship that we have talked about and we will be talking about, there is the longing. I spoke about it in the past lesson, but I want to touch upon it again today. A simple, ancient, profoundly human longing to be seen, to be known, not just to be loved, but really to be known and to be held, to be in a relationship with someone that sees you, not the version of you that performs, not the version of you that is not vulnerable, but that vulnerable, tender one, where your fears, not just to be loved and to be known, but to be in a relationship with someone that truly sees you. Not the version of you that has to perform for the world, but the real, deep, intimate you, where your fears are not used against you, where your growth is celebrated rather than threatening, where love is not measured by how well you manage yourself, but expressed as a daily, living, imperfect choice to keep showing up for each other, day after day after day. And that is what conscious love actually feels like from the inside. And that is what these 4 conversations in the lesson today are really about. Today, we're not talking about techniques and we're not talking about communication management. We will talk about communicating tools later in another lesson. But today, we're talking about the path towards genuinely knowing each other, knowing that one person that you want to build your life with. And here's something that I've noticed in my work with couples and honestly my personal life also. In my own relationships in the past, when people come to me for coaching, they often begin by asking for tools. They want to learn how to communicate better, resolve conflict, feel more connected. But underneath all of those desires, usually there's a quieter, more essential one. The one that we were talking about, being loved in a way that feels awake. To be in a relationship where you truly feel met. And when I ask them what is missing, what they would change in the relationship if they could, they rarely say like more passion or fewer arguments. They say things like, I want to feel that they really know me. I want to feel heard. I want to feel like we're on the same team. I want to be able to say what's true without becoming a conflict, without turning that conversation into a war. And those are not technique problems. They're actually intimacy problems, connection, really talking to each other. They're almost always backtracked to the same source. They're conversations that the couple never had between them, and that if they would have had them early in their relationship, it would have changed the relational field in which they both live. What happens without them is that most couples talk constantly, but they talk about logistic, about children, about what needs to get done, who does what and when. And when you do this for years, like practical logistical conversations, years or even decades, well, they're needed because you need to move forward with life and who's going to take care of the kids and, who has soccer practice and who has ballet practice. The most important conversations, the ones that are about North Star, about needs, about really getting to know each other, are perpetually unspoken. Not because they don't care, because nobody ever told them that these conversations were necessary to hold themselves, to hold the relationship, because it can feel very vulnerable to name what you actually need, because some conversations feel really big or actually too risky to have them, or simply like uncomfortable to begin with. And so the assumptions of the things you didn't want to talk, they accumulate. And those unspoken needs become unspoken resentments. The shared life that was never really consciously designed begins to drift in directions that neither of you fully chose or actually understand. And again, that's not failure of love. It is what happens when love is not supported with intentionality and by language. So there are 4 conversations that I consider that are foundational to a conscious relationship. Most couples have never had them. I can tell you, I was married for 25 years and I don't remember having some of these. We have circled around them and maybe you touch upon them, and if they get a little bit uncomfortable, they never end up landing and you never actually finish the conversations. So the first conversation is a values conversation, not about what you both like or dislike, but what about, not about what you both like or dislike, or what about you're going to be doing for vacation, or even what kind of parents you're going to be. No, a little deeper than that. Those are important and they matter, but value conversations go even deeper. It asks, what do we actually stand for as a couple? What are our non-negotiables that guide our lives when difficult times are upon us and easy answers are not available? What matters more to either of us, being comfortable or being right? When 2 people know the answers to these sometimes difficult conversations, and when they've named them together and they return to them, they have what I call a North Star, a shared orientation that guides a relationship, especially in the moments when everything else feels very uncertain. Without it, couples navigate from mood to mood, or as I told you in other lessons, they just allow the relationship to drift from conflict to conflict, from more practical and transactional conversations without any deeper compacts to return to. The second conversation, it's a needs conversation. And I want to be careful here because this conversation is one of the ones that is most avoided and definitely most necessary. And not what I need in theory, what I actually need from the other person in this relationship. Sometimes we think that if love is enough, the other person should know what I need and everything should work out. But not really. When you have this conversation, things are spelled out. What makes you feel truly safe? What makes you feel seen? What do you need when you're in pain? And how is that different from what you need when you're just tired? What has gone unasked for a long time that you now want to voice because you believe it is okay? What makes you feel seen? What do you need when you're in pain that is different than when you're just tired? And what has gone unasked for so long that you have started to feel like it's unreasonable to want it? Most people never ask for what they need directly. They hint it, they hope, they rely on love, and without noticing, they grow quietly resentful because they think that the other partner doesn't care. And really what happened is the other partner simply doesn't know. We cannot expect our partner to read our minds. I have learned in my own life that there's a profound difference between saying you're never present and saying I miss you. One accuses and the other one invites. One creates distance and the other one creates an opening for connection. And that shift from accusation to longing, from judgment to vulnerability, changes everything. And it begins with being willing to name what you actually need instead of waiting for the other person to guess it. The third conversation is a fear conversation. And this one is quite rare, but life-altering, and perhaps the most transformative. What are you most afraid of in this relationship? Not abstractly, but specifically. Are you afraid of being left, of being smothered, or slowly disappearing into the relationship and actually losing yourself? Or your partner eventually seeing you fully and deciding that you're too much or maybe not enough? Most of us really carry those fears quietly, and we act from them constantly in a way that we pursue or that we withdraw, in the things we avoid saying, in the moments we protect ourselves, and maybe we just withdraw. And yet we almost never name these fears to the person that we're building our life with. When two people can say their fears out loud to each other, not as compliments or accusations, but as simple truth, something shifts and something happens. The fear actually loses its power, and the partner who hears it is no longer knowingly triggering something that they did not even know existed. They become instead someone who can hold that fear for you with care and with love. Again, sounds beautiful to me, that romantic part of me. The fourth is the vision conversation. And I love this one because this allows you to dream. And these conversations, and all of them, you should have them periodically, not just like once in the lifetime. This conversation of vision is where are we going together? Not just practically, like the city, the house, how many children, but as a couple, as a family. Who do we want to become together? What kind of relationship do we want to build 10 years from now, 20 years? How is our life going to look like we are 80 years old? What does thriving mean to each of us? And what does thriving mean within that relationship? What makes both of you happy? What are your dreams, your expectations? How do you want to grow old together? Most couples have these conversations probably at the beginning and maybe implicitly through some of the decisions that they have to make to build their life together. But here's something about actually sitting down intentionally and naming it consciously. When you sit down together and say, this is what I'm building towards. Is this the same that what you want to build? When two people share their vision, when they can name it and keep returning to it over and over again, the relationship has direction and it has power. It has two minds, two hearts working towards that same goal. It is not a place where two lives just happen independently. It's a place where two people that love each other are creating something together. Just see how different that feels. It's deliberate, it's on purpose, it's devotion. And as I said before, these conversations are not a one-time event. They are ongoing practices. These conversations should happen again and again because life happens, seasons change, we age, and life sometimes brings particular challenges that maybe shift our whole perspective on life. So specifically, this vision conversation needs to be revised because we are becoming within the relationship, and the relationship needs to keep up with us as individuals and as a couple. This is what I mean when I talk about intentionality as devotion. Setting aside time, not when a crisis asks that of you, but as a regular practice while you're checking in with each other. Then again, ask the questions. To ask the questions that keep the relationship current. To make sure that the person that you're loving today is the person that you actually know, and it's not the version of them that you knew 5-10 years ago and it hasn't been updated since. A simple practice that you can do is maybe once every 2 weeks, just 30 minutes, and just ask each other 3 questions. What are we doing well between us? What needs more attention? What do we want to build? Where are we going to go? Are we right now? How are we doing right now? And these, please don't think of them as therapy sessions. They're not. These are two people choosing to stay curious and genuinely know each other and check in on the state of the union. How are they doing in their relationship? Keep it current. I want to come back to something before we close. The 4 conversations are not tools. They are in service to how you're feeling in the relationship, how the relationship is allowed to grow, where your triggers are understood rather than weaponized, where love is not performed but actually lived, where love is not a performance but a living, breathing, daily choice of devotion. What it feels like to be loved consciously, it's not dramatic. It's actually warm and quiet. It's the experience of saying something true and being met with curiosity rather than defense. It's being held and feeling safe, of needing something and being able to ask for it without shame, of being afraid to naming something out loud to someone and still know that you can say it because they care and they will hold you. It is the feeling, rare, but entirely possible, of being genuinely known. And that is what these 4 conversations are in service of. Values, needs, and fears. Which ones have you had with your partners and which ones haven't you had? Which one feels the most uncomfortable to begin with? And that one, the most difficult one, is the reason to not avoid it. Because almost always it's pointing you exactly where most of the growth is available for you. More intimacy, more love, and more connection. So if you take one thing from this lesson today, is that the most important conversations in relationships are rarely the ones that are happening by accident. They are the ones that you choose to have on purpose, with care, again and again. Make sure you keep them current. If this work resonates with you and you want to go deeper into it, Secret Circle is a community built around emotional mastery, relational literacy, and conscious living, a space for people who want to grow with purpose and more intentionality. And in the next lesson, we're going to go somewhere that it might surprise you. Because even when you know that a conversation, and in the next lesson, we're going to go somewhere that might surprise you. Because even when you know that these conversations need to happen, something gets in the way. For most people, it's not lack of willingness. It is a pattern so old and so familiar that it could feel like part of your personality. But trust me, it is not. We're going to look at why avoiding conflict is quietly doing more damage than the actual conflict itself could ever do. So I'm going to see you in the next lesson. And thank you so much for being here. I hope this lesson served you, and I hope that this whole series is of value to you.